Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. Of course, I'm in the middle, of my reviews for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films. And of course, this review is for the sixth movie? Yeah, the sixth film. God, it feels like this has kind of flown by. This is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning, which is a prequel to the 2003 remake. This, of course, came out in 2006, by the way. I watched the unrated cut. I've owned both of these copies forever, since they came out, basically. And The Beginning is one that, it was the first one I ever saw in theaters. I think it was the second or third one I saw. I can't remember if I saw the original film before or after this movie. I think it was a year before this film came out, in 2005-ish, about the time I saw the remake. But anyway, The Beginning is not directed by Marcus Nispel, even though it looks identical, which I have to give Jonathan Liebsman, the director, who also did he did the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Michael Bay film, the first one. He did some other things that I'm not impressed with, but you probably know the guy. Not a bad director, just not as good as Marcus Nispel. His directorial eye is not as good, nor was the budget, I think, as big as the first one. Sometimes it seems like it, sometimes it seems even bigger than the remake's budget, but sometimes it doesn't. Anyway, Liebsman tries to match what Nispel did in the remake in 2003, 3 years before this movie. And sometimes he lands, a lot of the time he lands. These two films work very well as a duology. In case you're a big fan of the remake and you haven't seen this film due to bad word of mouth, this is a prequel just to that film. It's not tied to the original movie at all. The way it stands on that is that it has a couple of the actors from the remake come back for this movie. Now, when I say this is a prequel, this is not just like an event right before the events of the first movie or the remake or whatever. This is going back as far back as the origin story of Leatherface being born in a meat sweatshop. That is gross. That is a nasty, disgusting prologue to this movie that I don't think enough people talk about. It's really pretty sick. It's pretty nasty watching his mom give birth to him, dying on the floor after she gives birth to him, and then having the gall to show that the meat industry owners even threw the baby in the dumpster behind the building, which then, at that point, made me think about Family Guy's song, Prom Night Dumpster Baby. And, yeah, I'm a sicko. And that's the kind of stuff this film encouraged in my brain. Now, the movie itself is basically a little bit different from some of these other films. It was actually this time around the time the Vietnam War is going on. We follow two brothers and their girlfriends. One of the brothers, the younger one, Dean, is actually played by the kid that was the main character in Phantom of the Megaplex from Disney, which is one of my favorite Disney Channel original movies ever made. I love it a lot. Love that guy a lot. He's pretty good here too. Even better in Phantom of the Megaplex if you haven't seen it before. But anyway, these two brothers are having to basically get drafted for the Vietnam War. The older brother has been there already. The younger brother from Phantom of the Megaplex is going for the first time, and he's not really super big on this. He's kind of against the war, but not like in a hippie way. He's just kind of thinking otherwise about what it's like to be drafted, why be drafted, those kinds of things. The film doesn't focus too much on that. It's not a political movie at all. But it's interesting to see these two brothers who haven't discussed this yet, right before they're about to ship out. They're actually on the way to get shipped out to Vietnam to fight, and their girlfriends tag along, one of them being kind of our final girl, named Jordana Brewster. Of course, you probably know her from the Fast and Furious movies. Yeah, Jordana Brewster is in this. I did not remember that at all. She's super generic. Just in general as an actress, she's not really that good. She's fine for what she has to do typically in any franchise she's in. This is a great example of nothing much different, if I'm being honest with you. Everybody in here, I think, gives a solid performance. Everybody. The villains, which are in the family, whether it be Leatherface, the actor playing him this time around, who is different, I believe, than the guy from the remake. It's mostly fine. It's mostly fine. Now, these young fellas here that are in the draft situation and their girlfriends encounter a biker at one point, and the female biker out of the group decides to attack them, and she gets killed by R. Lee Ermey, who comes back in here. He's faking the sheriff role, he takes her out, then he takes these kids captive, of course, to probably try to cannibalize them at some point, and they encounter Leatherface in the midst of that. This is the thing, though. Leatherface is not focused on as much in this movie. It's mostly R. Lee Ermey, who this time around I remember the name. Sorry, I did my review for the remake, I couldn't remember his name to save my life. Here I am. Excuse me about that. Anyway, R. Lee Ermey is the real focus of this film. You really don't see Leatherface do much of anything, aside from being born, hanging around, being a creep, until about 50 minutes into this film. The film is an hour and a half, so most of the film is over by the time he really gets to do stuff for us, the audience. But that doesn't say that there's not some great moments, some great quotes that R. Lee Ermey pulls off, some great kills in the film. The practical effects look fantastic in the movie. I think every single one looks good. Some are a little nonsensical. Some are a little bit kind of, including with the ending, the very final moments of the film that you're like, there's no way that was even possible. It's kind of a mess sometimes. But there are certain kills involving like the bikers and like these kids here. And like one particular character that you saw in the remake that this is prequelizing, that I really loved all of those effects. The gore looked fantastic. And again, the directing style matched that remake so well that I think a lot of people who love the remake will love this too. I'm surprised by some of my friends that I've been friends with for 10 years now who tell me they hate this film but they love the remake. To me, they really are a good duology. Like I said, they fit very well together for the most part. Of course, you couldn't make a sequel to the 2003 film because of what happened to Leatherface at the end of the movie. Nobody wanted to see a one-armed Leatherface, just let's be honest. But they decided to go the prequel route, and they even allow enough space that you could easily make another film in between this film and the remake, but they didn't do that. So here we are all these years later. Anyway, there's really not much more to say about the film. The music is generic once again. It's kind of that CW feel. The same music pretty much to me, if not copy and pasted from the remake. It's identical to it. It's very cheap, very simplistic, very easy to put together, I think. It doesn't have really a good impact. It's kind of lame, if I'm being honest with you, that music. It is what it is. Now, I will say this. I do want to comment on one more thing. That is the look of Leatherface. Leatherface kind of has like a mask on, but he looks like Kane back in the day when Kane used to wear that like leather half a mask type of thing in WWE. I keep referencing all these different wrestlers, but that's really what he looks like in this movie, aside from the long bushy hair. He has like that leather looking mask that I don't know if that one is human skin or not. I don't think it is because he wears it to work before he gets fired. Yeah, Leatherface had a job once upon a time. That's a pretty fun fact. But in the film, he eventually does get his face from somebody else. That's pretty nice. I actually think that scene is pretty horrific. I think it's one of the worst in the sense of how horrific it is compared to pretty much anything in the series entirely. I think it's really, really horrific to watch. Very gruesome. Again, the gore is really good here. But let me say this. Leatherface, when he's wearing that leather, whatever it is, mask, most of the film, I don't really like the look of him. But then when he gets the actual face that he's wearing, like right here, I think he looks better than he did in the remake. Almost. Not always, but almost. I like the look a little bit more here. I don't really know if I do for sure, like officially, if I make a ranking on the Leatherface looks. Leatherface, a lot of the time, usually 9 times out of 10, is a big old miss for me when it comes to most of these films. There's been a lot of bad versions of Leatherface in all of these movies, pretty much. And sometimes they get him right. And I think this is one where half of the film gets him right, half of it doesn't. In the look, at least. The performance is not bad, like I said. It's just the look. Kind of like in the remake. It's just a very wish-washy thing. Some angles I like the look of him there, some I don't. Same thing applies here. Anyway, with all that being said, I really don't have much more to say about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning. It's okay. It's watchable. It's a little less watchable than the remake, but there are certain moments that I do like more. But again, these two fit really well together. In case you're a big fan of this one and haven't seen this one before due to bad word of mouth, again, it doesn't really matter. You should check them both out, I think, if you happen to be a fan of the remake. I think they have a lot to offer. They're definitely not the worst of the series, like the beginning typically gets called out to be. I have friends, again, who say that all the time. I think you'd have to be ignoring a lot to think this is worse than Part 2, worse than Part 4. There's a lot of bad shit out there, but this is not like the worst of it, in my opinion. Anyway, have you seen the film? What do you think about it? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on this film down in the comment section down below. And if I had to rate the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, on a 5-star basis, I'm kind of leaning towards probably a 3 out of 5. it's like right there with the remake. Again, I like it a little bit less than the remake, but just slightly. Very, very slightly on my scale. Anyway, have you seen it? What do you think? Put your thoughts and comments down below, guys. Thank you for watching. God bless you all. Now let's move on to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D, or just Texas Chainsaw, or Texas Chainsaw 3D, whatever the many titles you'd like to refer to that shit as. I can get there in a moment, but I'll review that here soon. Anyway, thank you guys, God bless you all, and goodbye.